With over 65 published books, 200 short stories, and 5 decades of experience to his name, it's no wonder that Stephen King knows how to spin a good yarn. His work, from the horrific to the poignant, not only resonate with readers around the world, but with gamers and game developers too. Stephen King's stories are so universal, so ingrained in pop culture, that they've inspired many aspiring writers, whether they consciously knew it or not. From Salem's Lot to It to Doctor Sleep, the King of Horror certainly earned his moniker. But while he may be best known for his monsters, it's his human horrors that stick out most vividly, and which the following games took most closely to heart. While only 2 of the entries on this list have outright cited Stephen King's work as a direct source of inspiration, the others deal with settings and themes heavily associated with the master of storytellings. I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 video games clearly inspired by Stephen King. Number 10, Deadly Premonition. I know what you're thinking. Deadly Premonition is based on Twin Peaks, you fool! A little hurtful, but yes. With its cast of kooky characters, twisting central murder mystery narrative, and bizarre non-sequentials, the game certainly takes more than a few cues from David Lynch's 90s TV series. But at the same time, the quirky small-town setting, and the fact that the motives for the murder soon veer into the supernatural, just screams Stephen King. An incredibly divisive and opinion-splitting game, Deadly Premonition follows FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan as he hunts down the man, or creature, responsible for the murder of an 18-year-old girl and a swathe of other killings, known as the Mysterious Raincoat Killer. Its gameplay and story might be contentious, but you can't deny its outright unsettling atmosphere. While King would later go all-out paranormal crime thriller with books like The Outsider, the deadly premonitions of the Dead Zone, see what we did there, and the overall oppressiveness of the dark little town of Derry in It and many others feel like they were lifted wholesale when writer and director Hidetaka Suehiro created his magnum opus. Just imagine a fever dream written by King and directed by David Lynch, and you've got Deadly Premonition. Number 9, Shadow's Peak. A writer researching his next book in a strange town, eerie local legends that contain more than just a kernel of truth, and mysterious dark appearances. Yeah, we think Stephen King may have influenced Shadow's Peak just a little. Though, frankly, with King's penchant for writing about them, just about any game starring a writer could have made this list. For an indie title developed by just one man, Shadow's Peak is very ambitious. Players step into the shoes of writer Tom Blair as he travels to the sinister and secretive Shadow's Peak in the hopes of writing a book about the legends there, but only gets pulled into the far darker mystery. Once drawn in, players are left to their own devices and given free rein to explore the expansive map and find clues as and when they stumble across them without any hand-holding from the game. You'd better keep a notepad on hand because Shadow's Peak won't do any of the work for you. The gameplay is a little rough around the edges and its inherent jankiness may put some players off, but if you can overlook that, the game's atmosphere and ability to build tension call to mind some of Stephen King's rougher, but no less spooky earlier works. Number 8, The Park. From Joyland to It, Stephen King loves his amusement parks. Although anyone who reads those books or has seen the films will know there's nothing amusing after old Stephen's got his hands on them. The Park, a psychological horror title by Funcom, the developers behind Conan Exiles and Dune Spice Wars, leans heavily into the eerier side of funhouses and Ferris wheels. Set in the Atlantic Island amusement park, players take control of Lorraine, a single mother and widow whose young son Callum has gone missing. The titular park is run down, vandalised, and most definitely haunted. But somehow, despite the decay, all of the rides are still fully operational, and the player must be brave and guide Lorraine through this living nightmare to find her son. These rides, ranging from the Tunnel of Tales to a roller coaster and a witch-infested house of horrors, while terrifying in their own way, also fill the player in on Lorraine's tragic backstory, as well as the deeply disturbing history of the park. The developers may not have outright said the game was inspired by King's work, but a monstrous ghostly presence haunting the House of Horrors could have been lifted straight from the pages of Joyland. I don't know about you, but I'll never look at a merry-go-round the same ever again. Number 7. The Cat Lady. Stephen King is known for delving deep into dark themes, finding the worst parts of humanity and dragging them kicking and screaming into the light. The Cat Lady by Harvester Games walks a similar path. Just one look at the Cat Lady's morbid art style should be enough to clue you in that this isn't going to be a fun game in the traditional sense. Dealing with themes of depression, illness, violence, and others far too grisly to mention here, this indie horror game plays like some of the King's bleakest short stories, tales like those found in Full Dark No Stars. The game also includes a few references alluding to The Shining and Misery. In The Cat Lady, players take on the role of Susan Ashworth, a woman whose only companions are the stray cats she keeps, and who has decided life is not worth living. Her decision to end it all leads to a conversation with the Queen of Maggots, a demonic entity who gives Susan's life new meaning by tasking her with killing 5 human parasites. Lovely. Seriously, this is a dark game and not one for the faint of heart. Not even the cats provide any comfort. If you've read Pet Sematary, you'll know just how scary cats can be. Oh no, Church! Leave that man's face alone! Number 6. Sanitarium. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Man gets into a car accident and ends up in a coma. World moves on without him. Man wakes up years later with no memory of where he is or what happened. Granted, this could be the start of many great shock horror stories, but if you're a fan of King, only one book should come to mind: The Dead Zone. It's also the opening to 1998 point-and-click psychological horror masterpiece, Sanitarium, in which Max wakes up in a dilapidated asylum and must solve puzzles to find his way out and recover his lost past. But this is no ordinary asylum. As Max ventures deeper, he finds himself transported to horrific other worlds, from a small town populated by ancient god-worshipping children to an alien hive overrun by insects. Again, while the developers never overtly expressed that Stephen King was a source of inspiration, the similarities are plain to see. The Dead Zone being one, but the worlds Max visits have a dreamlike or nightmarish quality to them, very reminiscent of the bizarre and terrifying goings-on in It, especially when you reach the circus level. If Pennywise wasn't enough to do it, 2 minutes with the clowns in this game, and you'll never want to see a red nose or floppy shoes again. Number 5. Layers of Fear. The dangers of drink and depression and what they can do to a person's mind has long been a staple of Stephen King's stories. From The Shining to The Dark Half to, well, just about all of them. Stephen King is keen to impress the isolation and terrors alcohol abuse can cause if help is never found. Once again, developer Bloober Team never cited Stephen King as a source of inspiration for Layers of Fear, but his influence can be felt throughout. In Layers of Fear, players take on the role of a struggling artist, slowly descending into madness as he pours his soul into one final painting. As the player explores his ever-twisting and mutating Victorian mansion, the story unfolds via a series of auditory flashbacks, slowly spelling out his tragic past. And boy, is it tragic. While his life may have started out as a fairy tale, it very quickly turned Brothers Grimm. Considering his young family distractions, the artist took to drinking in a vain attempt to focus on his art, a decision that sent everything spiralling out of control, quite literally, as while the player explores the mansion, its rooms and hallways shift and change around them, in unsettlingly creative ways. Were that painting's eyes following me before? Or are all these paint fumes getting to me? Number 4. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. A child's disappearance that rocks a small American town. Dark secrets and malevolent spirits, a paranormal private investigator. This game sounds like the book Stephen King never wrote. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter is a first-person open-world horror mystery in which players step into the supernatural shoes of P.I. Paul Prospero as he searches the town of Red Creek Valley for a missing boy. This is easier said than done, as the game refuses to hold the player's hand. instead allowing them to explore the island and interact with clues as and when they choose. To make things easier, Prospero is gifted with the supernatural power to reconstruct crime and murder scenes, and piece together exactly what happened through a series of ghostly visions. Solve a few of the game's clever puzzles, and things quickly take a turn for the worse, as a spiderweb of conspiracy, murder, and good old-fashioned witchcraft starts to unravel, with you, the player, right at its heart. Once again, Stephen King may not have been named, but the tall trees, and the sense that something out there is hunting you, certainly reminds us of the likes of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Prospero's paranormal sleuthing powers must certainly come in handy. Do you think I could hire him to help me find my keys? Number 3. Night in the Woods. At first glance, Night in the Woods doesn't appear to belong with the other titles on this list. Anthropomorphic animals and cartoony visuals are about as far from the king of horror as you can possibly get. But on closer inspection, this 2D adventure game shares a great number of the themes of Stephen King's best and most timeless classics. In Night in the Woods, players take control of May, a college dropout who relocates to her hometown of Possum Springs, hoping to reconnect with the friends she left behind, only to immediately notice much has changed. The story, with its themes of childhood, depression, and the death of small-town America, all underpinned by something much, much darker, brings to mind the loss of innocence in Stand By Me, or the darkness that lurks hidden in small towns like those in Needful Things and others. Exploring Possum Springs is like coming back to a place you've long since outgrown. Yes, the people and places are still there, but they feel different, and you just can't place your finger on why. With the player's help, May can rekindle old friendships, rediscover lost loves, and maybe uncover the dark secrets buried below the town. For such a cutesy aesthetic, it does get a little dark. You know what they say, never judge a book by its cover, folks. Number 2, the Silent Hill series. The first of 2 entries where the developers themselves have actually confessed that Stephen King was a major source of inspiration, the Silent Hill series leans heavily into King's brand of human horror. The Silent Hill games tell the stories of a series of unfortunate individuals whose checkered pasts and lingering traumas draw them to Silent Hill, where the monsters of their minds physically manifest. The series leans heavily into the psychological horrors of isolation, the pressures of parenthood, and repressed desires, and turns those inner demons into outer demons, hellbent on tearing the protagonist limb from limb. With the other world, strange cults, and writhing fleshy abominations, Silent Hill has certainly left its mark on the gaming world, as well as the minds of those brave enough to pay the town a visit. The eponymous town, wreathed in fog, is set in King's home state of Maine, and is filled with the same small-town quirks and bubbling horror as his best stories. The games also directly reference his work, from The Shining's red rum, messages scrawled across walls, to Carrie's overbearing religious mother in villain Dahlia Gillespie, and The Mist from, well, The Mist. The first game's Harry Mason is even a writer, for goodness sake. Can you get any more on the nose than that? And number 1, Alan Wake. If there ever were a game to wear its inspiration on its sleeve, that game is Alan Wake. It even begins with a direct quote from the man himself. Fun fact, Stephen King graciously sold the rights to use for only $1. What a champ. Stephen King once said, "Nightmares exist outside of logic, and there's little fun to be had in explanations." There's no denying it sets the tone of the game perfectly. Alan Wake stars the titular Alan, a successful writer, surprise surprise, currently suffering through a 2-year stretch of writer's block. When his wife suggests a nice vacation to the quiet town of Bright Falls to get away, things quickly tumble out of control. Bright Falls, you see, is no ordinary town, and after a car crash sees him lose a week of his life, Alan finds a town littered with the pages of a story he can't remember writing. A story that is coming to life. The lake house setting and writer's block-stricken author come right out of the pages of Bag of Bones, and the blending of fiction and reality is practically Secret Window, Secret Garden come to digital life. When the game starts with the words Stephen King, it's not a stretch to say it might be something of a homage.